Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time of day it is, I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and Simon Says, sit comfortably and enjoy the show. Yeah! All right, have fun, guys. So it's finally time to tangle with the McKim family of Baltimore. And thanks to our high pimptress here, Emily McKim, her family can no longer hide behind their branch of the Paradigm Puzzle tree. And so, Falcon's Maze with the McKim family starts with their name. And I'm sure this is going to be a big shock to you, but McKim is a Scottish name, right? And it's first found in the Isle of Bute, and I hope I'm saying that properly, in western Scotland, where they held lands anciently granted by the King of Scotland. And so it's interesting, they say found in the Isle of Bute, but this is actually the Isle of Arran, right? And it's the County Bute. So a little misleading there. Not sure what that's all about. But the name McKim, it actually comes from the personal name Simon, which is a diminutive form of that name, right? And Gaelic forms of the name are Mac Shim, meaning son of Sim, or Mac Shimmet, meaning son of Simon. And of course, they're worm knights, and with the number of sons of Simon in this story, they are now Sir Shimsalot. Right? Them's is Sir Shimsalot. and so the name Simon comes to Britain and the UK via the Crusades. Right? It says that this baptismal name was rarely found in the British Isles before the famous Crusades to the Holy Land in the 11th and 12th centuries. Thereafter, it became very popular for returning soldiers or pilgrims to call their children by biblical or Greek names in commemoration of the father's exploits. This fashion spread so quickly through Europe that within 2 generations, such names as John, Thomas, and Simon had replaced over half the traditional Gaelic, French, German, and Anglo-Saxon names. And so now think about that for a minute. In less than 50 years, more than half of the Western and Northwestern European names are replaced by these 3 names? And I'm sure this looks the same on the female side of it, that more than half the names were replaced by Mary or Catherine or something. You want to talk about taking over a culture from within? What's the quickest way to erase a people? Make them forget who they are by changing their names, disconnecting them from their cultural roots. Especially when these names are the ones that are going to evolve into surnames as we know them today. It seems like perhaps the British colonists took a page from this book when they were planting America. I don't know, just some open speculation there. And just like that, over some centuries, some son of Simon becomes a McKim due to some regional dialect variation. And so if McKim is son of Simon, well then who's Simon, right? And so the answer to that lies in the McKim family's origin inside the clan Fraser. No, not Fraser Crane. Although looking at it now, I'm starting to think that maybe the character of Fraser Crane could be a tribute to the clan Fraser of Scotland. I don't know, right? It's kind of curious. And the Fraser clan dates back to the Norman invasion of 1066. And so now there seems to be some confusion in where the name Fraser actually comes from. Because although they're traced back to coming over with William the Conqueror in the Norman invasion of 1066, when actually going back, there doesn't appear to be any Frasers in Anjou or in Normandy, which is kind of interesting. So traditionally, then one of the answers to that is that the Frasers take their name from the French word for strawberry. And there are strawberries on some Fraser coats of arms. But I also found out that certain members of the Clan Fraser military would wear twigs of yew in their caps, and the yew berry is a red berry. And so this makes me wonder if it's a clue that perhaps the ancient Frasers were a red-headed people, right? That they were gingers, like Ron Howard here, or the 2 princes. And when I Googled red-headed Scottish family for a reference photo, this is one of the photos that I found. Look at this picture. Can you imagine an unhappier family? I mean, this is really unbelievable. What are they saying about red-headed people in Scotland? That they're all miserable? And my phone just agreed with me there, which is kind of funny. I don't know, this is just pure speculation on my part, but I don't know, kind of interesting. That's what the strawberry connection kind of made me think of. All right, so the Frasers, allegedly they come over with William the Conqueror in 1066, as I said, and, after this invasion settles down and everything, they are granted land in East Lothian in Scotland, in the lowlands here. And it's from here that they feel free to move about the country. Now, the thing about the Frasers is that their clan chieftains loved one name above all others, And you guessed it, that name is Simon. Right? It was a Simon that settled the lands in East Lothian, and it's a Simon that sits as their clan chieftain today. And here he is, right here, the Right Honorable Simon Fraser, the 18th Lord Lavot. And so what is it about the name Simon that the Frasers, for generations, millennia even at this point it seems, that their heirs apparent would all be named Simon? Or for the most part, there are some other names in the Fraser clan, but Simon is the most predominant, especially among their chieftains. And so what does Simon mean? So according to Wiki, and it says that Simon is a common name from the Hebrew, right? And it means listen or hearing, right? And it says that it's also a classical Greek name deriving from an adjective meaning flat-nosed. And so when I read that, the first image that sprang to mind was boxer's nose, right? And this turned out to be rather apropos given the fighting spirit of the clan Fraser, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And I think it's interesting that Wiki also says that Simon was the most popular male name for Jews in Roman Judea. And now this introduced kind of an interesting novel concept to me. It's one I haven't really thought about yet, and that is the Romanized Jew, and the role that the Romanized Jew could possibly play in Baltimore and Baal to Rome. That remains to be seen, but very interesting concept, the Romanized Jew, and one that's going to be worth keeping an eye out for down the line, I'm sure. But one thought that I had about the name Simon was how it can carry two very different ideas. It's a very dichotomous name, right? Because on one hand, we have like Simple Simon or the Simpleton. And then, of course, we have the Mother Goose nursery rhyme, which I'm sure everyone in this listening audience probably grew up with, right? Simple Simon met a pieman going to the fair, right? And one thing that's interesting about this poem is that the earliest example of it appears to be from 1685, but they say that it may have been in circulation much longer, possibly appearing in an Elizabethan chapbook, which would date it to like 100 years before this, which could place it squarely in the realm of Manners and Poe and Byron and Nottinghamshire and all of that. I don't know, again, a little more open speculation there. But on the other side of this, there's the ever popular Simon Says, right? And Simon says, repeat after me. And Simon says, keep making more Simons, because that's exactly what the Frasers do. In fact, there are so many Simons that they split into two different clans around the time of the Scottish Wars for Independence in the early 1300s. There's the older Clan Fraser, who came across with William the Conqueror, and then the one that splits off around the time of that Scottish War for Independence called the Clan Fraser of Lavot. And it's this clan that our boy Simon Fraser, 18th Lord of Lavot, is their current chief, all right? And so the clans Fraser, they're clans of warriors. They like to mix it up. But unfortunately, the Frasers have a problem with loyalty. They constantly flip back and forth between fealty to the Scottish crown or fealty to the British crown. Right? It's a constant struggle for these Frasers. But by the time of the Scottish Wars for Independence in the early 1300s, they are squarely backing William Wallace and Robert the Bruce and the right of Scottish kings. William Wallace, so famously portrayed by Mel Gibson in Braveheart, and this is allegedly what Robert the Bruce actually looked like. This is a bust created by forensic sculptor Christian Courbet, all right? And so somebody handed him a skull in 2017 that they believe is Robert the Bruce's, and this is the recreation that he made, right? And I think he's a rather interesting looking fellow, right? He's got very high cheekbones and inset eyes that are very close together, and kind of like a low brow. He doesn't have much of a brow at all. I don't know, really kind of an interesting looking dude, if this is even him at all. And so it's during this time of rebellion that Robert the Bruce awards a bunch of land in Inverness to one Simon Fraser, 1st Laird of Lavot, all right, who dies in 1333. Of course he does, right? Love that, right? And I think it's interesting that Inverness is right near Loch Ness, so possibly connecting the Frasers and Loch Ness. And of course we had St. Columba up there, Columba, whatever his name was, right? Spreading his gospel and, casting Nessie out of the loch, right? And so let's talk about Simon Fraser, 1st Laird of Lavot, real quick. And so now the gatekeepers don't really offer up much on the 1st Laird of Lavot here, other than that he fought ferociously for Scottish independence, right? And that he was Robert the Bruce's boy, all right? And that's why Robert the Bruce gave him so much land in the Highlands. Right? He fought and served with great distinction at the Battle of Bannockburn, which is one of Scotland's greatest military victories over England. And he falls in combat in 1333 at the Battle of Halidon Hill. Right? And that's pretty much it, other than that he starts this Lavot line of the Clan Fraser. And it's this Simon Fraser, first Laird of Lavot, that our McKims trace their lineage to. Right? I found this while looking into the name, right, and all the variations thereof, and it says that the first name holders claiming descent from Simon Fraser killed at the Battle of Halidon Hill, 1333. And this makes sense when you see the scope of the Fraser territory go all the way from Inverness down to these islands here. It's this large swath of the Highlands here, including some of these Hebrides Islands, like the Isle of Arran here in County of Bute, which is where our family name McKim is first found. And so if the name McKim is short for Simon, and the McKims trace their ancestry to this Simon Fraser, first Laird of Lavot, right, well then that would make the first McKim some son of his, right? Maybe? I don't know. But if you're Emily McKim, you are certainly very proud of the first Laird of Lavot, Simon Fraser, who fought so valiantly at Bannockburn. But there are other stories to tell. There are so many Simon Frasers, right? And the next Simon Fraser that I want to talk about is this Simon Fraser's kinsman, none other than the wild boy himself, Sir Simon Fraser the Patriot. And there are an awful lot of the Patriots in Mud City. Have you noticed that? Charles Carroll the Signer, he was a the Patriot. David Poe Sr., he was a the Patriot, right? And I'm sure there was another the Patriot out there whose name I'm just forgetting right now. It's really unbelievable the number of the Patriots there are in this story. And so in 1296, Sir Simon Fraser the Patriot here is fighting the good fight with his Scottish brethren, trying to kick the English scum out of Scotland at the Battle of Dunbar when he's captured by King Edward I's forces and is imprisoned. And so being a nobleman, he's charged with treason and stripped of all his lands and titles. And adding insult to injury, King Edward forces him to fight in a campaign he has going on over in Flanders.
Stupid Flanders.
But in a sterling example of the Fraser flip-flop, Sir Simon here senses an opportunity and serves the king with such distinction that upon his return, King Edward grants Sir Simon Fraser a horse and makes him a member of the household knights, essentially a member of King Edward's personal bodyguard. Just a year before, Sir Simon is trying to kill him on the battlefield, and now he's one of his personal bodyguards. And Sir Simon's treachery is so complete that as a reward for helping to fight and to defeat his former boss, William Wallace, at the Battle of Falkirk, he's given all his land and titles back. But not only that, King Edward makes him keeper of Selkirk Forest, or Ettrick Forest, right? And Selkirk Forest is a former royal forest in the Scottish border areas of Scotland, and it's a large area of moorland, south of Peebles, and I like that, right? And it once stretched from Ayr to Selkirk. And so I wanted to see what that looked like, right? So I put that in a map, right? And here's Ayr here, and Selkirk is a good 2/3 of the way across Scotland. So this was a really big royal forest. And so now I don't know if the name Ayr is ringing any bells for you, but this is the Ayrshire. This is where the immortal David Poe and the prophet, the masked man, Alexander Payton, hid out when they were on the lam during their Covenanting days, which is land that apparently once belonged to the Templars. And so what we have happening now, right, is we have Frasers and Poes and McKims all in this area of Scotland here. And there's a royal forest attached to it, lest we forget that there are little green fairies roaming about these moorlands. I mean, just really amazing the way this story just keeps tying itself together this way, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And so I think it's interesting that Sir Simon Fraser, the Patriot, he's the only keeper of Selkirk. The title dies with him in 1306, which is interesting because, conveniently enough, shortly after King Edward regrants him his lands and his titles and styles him keeper of Selkirk Forest, that old Fraser flip-flop itch needs a scratching, right? And he rejoins his Scottish brethren in mid-1301, and incredibly enough, 4 years after being captured and being a turncoat and fighting for the British and all of that, when he rejoins William Wallace puts him in charge, right? And he leads the Scottish troops at the Battle of Roslin, which may be the biggest victory the Scottish armies have over England in the entire conflict, right? The battle plays out much like a Scottish version of 300, right? A vastly outnumbered Scottish army, led by our intrepid Sir Shimsalot here, swiftly defeats a massive invading English force. It's that old underdog victory chestnut circulating its way through Scottish history here. I don't know how many times a vastly outnumbered force emerged victorious in history, but I bet it's a lot, right? But the Battle of Roslin, which takes place at the future home of Roslin Chapel, that bastion of all things Templary, it's just a battle. It's not the war. And when the tide starts to turn in England's favor, that tricky flip-flop button needs to be pressed again, and Simon Fraser jumps ship one more time, right? And he accepts an olive branch from Edward I, and showing even more duplicity, he is now actively involved in the hunt for William Wallace, who's a fugitive. But after William Wallace is captured, tried, and executed, Sir Simon here has a change of heart and jumps back over to the Scottish side one more time and joins Robert the Bruce's forces. But it's not long after that he is captured, and there's no more flip-flopping for Sir Simon Fraser the Patriot here. He's tried and convicted and executed in the exact same manner as William Wallace, which is that he's hung until nearly dead, disemboweled, drawn and quartered, and then beheaded, and his head placed on a spike, allegedly next to William Wallace's, whose head must have been in pretty rough shape, because it would have been up there for a few to several months by this point. And again, who knows whose heads those really were, and if they even did such atrocious things, that always just seems to be like such a fairy tale thing to me. Scary stories to act as a deterrent, maybe. I don't know. But there's one last Simon Fraser I want to talk about, even if it's just to put him in our back pocket for later. And that's Simon Fraser the 11th. Lord Lavot, right? And he was nicknamed the Fox. And this is why we're going to put him in our back pocket for later. But look at this guy, right? Super foxy. Right? And he was the last and greatest of the old style Scottish chiefs, right? And being the 11th, that would make him the gateway to the new style Scottish chief. So I think that's kind of fun, right? And so the thing about the Fox here, what makes him so foxy, is that he's a world-class flip-flopper. If you thought Sir Shim's-a-lot Simon Fraser the Patriot flip-flopped a lot, this guy goes down as perhaps the greatest double agent in the history of Scotland. The way he manipulates the houses Hanover and Stuart in their conflict over who has the right to rule England. He flip-flops back and forth, and eventually it costs him his life as well. And so I don't know what Emily McKim would make of all this duplicity in her past, but considering that she was the founding member of the Colonial Dames of America and the Daughters of the Confederation, I have a sneaking suspicion it really didn't bother her all that much, right? And so if the McKim family gets their name from the Simons Fraser, and if the name Simon is coming to Europe and the UK via the Crusades, right, where they're naming their children after biblical and Greek names, then which biblical or Greek figure did the Frasers take the name Simon from? And so I've narrowed it down to 4 possibilities. I think these are the most likely characters that the Frasers could have taken the name Simon from. And so going in chronological order using the mainstream narrative, first on the list we have is Simeon. And he was the second of 6 sons of Jacob and Leah, and he's the founder of the Israelite tribe of Simeon, which is absent from the parts of the Bible which textual scholars regard as the oldest, which is kind of interesting. They kind of snuck that tribe in there at the end, right? And in the biblical story of Joseph being sold into slavery to the Egyptians, he's one of the jealous brothers who's had enough of Joseph in his Technicolor dream coat and conspires to get rid of Joseph. And the Hebrew translation of Simeon is, "There is sin." And so I like him for this. He's a likely suspect for where the McKims could have gotten the name Simon from. But there's also, in ancient Greek history, there's this Cimon. And he was a very successful Greek general and politician. Way too much for me to get into here. But again, a possible candidate if they're bringing back more than biblical names to Europe and to the UK. And so now there are apparently something like 14 Simons in the Bible. And as I said, I only cherry-picked a few. And next on the list is one of the biggest names in the Bible, at least in the New Testament anyway. And that's Peter the Apostle, the first bishop of Rome, the first pope, right? The bishop of Antioch. And he was known as Simon Peter. And I love this portrait of him because this is exactly what he looked like, right? And I love that he's holding 2 keys. This could be very important somewhere down the line, especially with how Peter the Apostle could be venerated in mystery schools. Very, very interesting. And chief apostle of Jesus Christo, though he may be, he's not the only apostle on this list, right? There's also the apostle Simon the Zealot, aka Simon the Canaanite, right? And you can't make that up, especially with the way Mud City runs these things, right? And he's one of the more obscure of the apostles. And this is an easy pick, not only for the Canaanite mentioned there, but because he may have been Jesus Christo's biological brother, or at least half-brother. And apparently Jesus Christo had lots of brothers and sisters. much to the chagrin of the virgin goddess-worshipping Catholics, right, who had to make excuses for this and saying that, his brothers and sisters weren't of that Mary, but half-brothers from Joseph, from another marriage, perhaps. But he is also called Simon the Patriot. So we have yet another the Patriot here, which is something that puts him near the top of this list, with Simon Fraser the Patriot and so forth, and the way the Patriot and the way the Patriots are playing a part of this story. And for those who've known me for so long, right, it's just really unbelievable. And there's not only this, but legend has it that he made it all the way to Great Britain. And not only that, he dies in Lincolnshire, which is where the Disneys were. Again, playing right into the Poe Chronicles. It's really unbelievable. And this doesn't even make him top of the list. On the top of the list of potential Simons that the Frasers could have named themselves after, we have Simon Magus. Right, Simon Magus, also known as Simon the Sorcerer or Simon the Magician. And they didn't call him Simon the Magician for nothing, right? Because he could fly, right? It says here that Simon appears as a formidable sorcerer with the ability to levitate and fly at will. And he's sometimes referred to as the Bad Samaritan due to his malevolent character, which is interesting because the act of simony is named after him. And so the act of simony is the act of selling church offices and rolls or sacred things. And it's named after Simon Magus here, who was apparently at one point John the Baptist's main understudy, right? And it's described in the Acts of the Apostles that Simon Magus here offers 2 disciples of Jesus payment in exchange for them empowering him to impart the power of the Holy Spirit to anyone on whom he would place his hands. And of course the disciples tell him that that power isn't for sale, right? And so he sulks away and forms his own religion. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He goes on to found Simoninianism, right? And he's also known as the founder of Gnosticism. Praise Yaldabaoth, right? It says that the sect of Simoninianism flourished in Syria and various districts of Asia Minor and at Rome, right? In the 3rd century, remnants of it still existed, which survived until the 4th century. So well after Rome converts to Christianity. I mean, very interesting. And as the founder of Simoninianism, right, he styles himself the most powerful godhead on the planet. More powerful than Jesus and Yahweh and all those other schlubs, right? Because he represents Yaldabaoth on earth. And so, really kind of an amazing story here. And it's this hubris that makes him such a likely candidate for the Frasers and then the McKims to have gotten the name Simon from, right? And so this is where we're going to wrap up the story of how the McKims got their name. But before I do close out, we're going to top this one off with a cherry. And that's when I was looking at the name variations for McKim. All the various McShimmises and McShimmies and McKimmies and so forth. I came across this one, right? McKimmy with a Y. And it said variations of McKimmy are McKean. And when I read that, I was like, you have to be kidding me. Michael McKean? Lenny? He's a McKim, right? Are you kidding me? You can't make this stuff up, right? And so remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? And so until the next one, cheers.